Hi, and welcome to the Early Retirement Roadmap Podcast, the show where I help you prepare for and thrive in early retirement. If you're within 5 years from retirement, here's the biggest mistake I think people make. They spend years, sometimes decades, doing a great job saving for retirement, but they wait too long to plan the actual transition into retirement. Saving for retirement is one phase. Actually living off your money is a completely different phase. So people get close to the finish line and suddenly realize there are still some very big things they have not figured out. What is retirement really going to cost? How expensive is health insurance going to be before Medicare if they retire early? Where is the income going to come from? Which accounts should they draw from first? How do taxes fit into all of this? And that is when what should feel exciting can start to feel stressful, especially with health insurance, because if you've spent most of your working years on an employer plan where your employer was picking up a big chunk of the cost, you may not fully realize how expensive that line item can feel and be once you're on your own. So, in this podcast episode, I want to walk you through the 7 big things I think you need to figure out before you retire so you're not scrambling late in the game. And stay tuned for number 7 because it is one of the biggest contributors to retirement peace of mind. It takes time to build, so it's not something you want to wait until after you retire to work on. Before we get into it, remember that this podcast is not personalized financial advice and is for educational purposes only. The first thing you need to figure out is what retirement is actually going to cost. Not what you hope it's going to cost, not what some rule of thumb says it should cost, and not what somebody on the internet says the average retiree spends. You need your number. What does your life actually cost now, and what is it likely to cost once you stop working? In retirement, some expenses may go down, but others may go up. You may travel more, you may spend more on hobbies, you may help family more. And if you are retiring before Medicare, health insurance can become a really huge expense. So before you retire, get honest about your expected spending. Plan it out in detail. Don't guess. Your regular monthly bills, insurance, property taxes, groceries, utilities, travel, fund money, home repairs, car repairs, taxes, all of it. Because if you do not know what retirement is going to cost, then you do not really know whether you're ready. And you definitely do not know how close you are. I do have a worksheet in my Patreon Tools library that helps walk through this if you want help building that number, and I'll link to that in the description. The second thing you need to figure out is where your retirement income is actually going to come from. Retirement is not just, I have $1 million, so I must be fine. It's about cash flow. What is actually going to pay the bills month after month, year after year? Is it coming entirely from your portfolio? Will you have a pension, rental income, part-time income? Will one spouse still be working? When does Social Security come into the picture? Two people can have the exact same portfolio size and can be in very different positions depending on what other income sources they have. So before you retire, you want to understand your income map. What money is coming from where? When does it start? Is it guaranteed like rental income or a pension? How much of your lifestyle still has to be funded by your investments? That brings me to number 3, which is having a withdrawal plan. This is where I think a lot of people are less prepared than they realize. They did a great job in the accumulation years. They contributed steadily. They built a nice nest egg. But they have not really thought through the mechanics of turning that pile of assets into a retirement paycheck. Which accounts are you going to draw from first? Your taxable brokerage, traditional retirement accounts, Roth accounts? This all really matters. It matters for taxes. It matters for long-term flexibility. And if you're not yet on Medicare, it matters for healthcare planning too. Because once you retire, you start to realize everything is connected. Which accounts you withdraw from affects your taxes. It affects your modified adjusted gross income or MAGI. And if you're on an Affordable Care Act plan before Medicare, that can directly affect your health insurance costs. You really cannot plan one of these well without thinking about the others. So when you're getting close to retirement, do not focus on whether your portfolio looks big enough. Focus on how you're actually going to use it. Number 4 is your health insurance plan before Medicare. If you're retiring before age 65, this needs to be part of your plan now, not something you're going to deal with later. For many early retirees, Affordable Care Act Marketplace Coverage, or ACA, is going to be the main option. And for most people, income planning matters a lot here because the amount of help you may receive towards your premiums is tied to your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI. So, where your retirement income comes from matters. If most of your retirement spending is coming from pre-tax accounts like an IRA or 401k, that money generally all counts as ordinary income, so it pushes up your MAGI. With a taxable brokerage account, it is not simply the amount you withdraw that counts. What generally matters is the taxable portion, things like realized capital gains, dividends, and interest. Your original basis is not taxed again, which makes taxable accounts more flexible than many people realize. And with qualified Roth withdrawals, that money generally does not count towards MAGI at all. This is why I've said in several podcasts that MAGI is not the same thing as spending power. You may be able to spend a lot more than your MAGI suggests, depending on where the money is coming from. So, two retirees could spend the exact same amount in a year and have very different MAGI numbers on paper. And that can mean very different health insurance costs. For many early retirees, staying under 400% of the federal poverty level, or FPL, for their household size can be critical for qualifying for premium tax credit help, or in other words, getting those subsidies. For example, for a household of two in the continental United States, that 400% FPL level line for 2026 coverage is $84,600. So if you are even $1 over that line, you lose subsidies altogether and are paying the full premium. And that's a big deal. And that is one of those areas where a planning mistake can cost you real money, potentially thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you are retiring before Medicare, do not treat health insurance as some side issue. It's one of the major planning categories. You want clarity on your likely premiums, how your income affects those premiums, and how all of that fits into your overall spending plan. I also have a free ebook about 10 levers you can pull to control MAGI, plus a free MAGI estimator Excel template and a video that breaks down what goes into MAGI. I'll link those in the description or show notes, along with the Affordable Care Act estimator tool link, so you can get a ballpark for what coverage may cost where you live to help you plan. Number 5 is to clean up as many big financial unknowns as possible before you retire. This is where a lot of the practical stuff comes in. Do you still have a large mortgage payment? Do you have other major debt? If so, seriously think about removing these burdens prior to retirement. Do you have estate documents in place? Is your current house still the right fit for retirement? Are both spouses retiring at the same time or not? Do you have any known major expenses coming up? The goal here is not perfection. The goal is clarity. You want to remove as many major unanswered questions as possible before you walk away from the paycheck, because uncertainty feels a lot heavier once employment income is gone. Number 6 is do not ignore the mental side of retirement. This gets overlooked way too often, and honestly, I overlooked it too. Retirement is not just a math problem, it's a life transition. You may be financially ready and still not feel emotionally or mentally ready. You may not realize how much of your identity is tied to your work until it's suddenly gone. You may have spent 30 years being the doctor, the teacher, the engineer, the manager, the business owner, whatever it is, and then one day you're simply not. That can hit you harder than you expect. You may not realize how much of your routine is built around work until that routine disappears. You may not realize how strange it feels to go from saving money for decades to suddenly spending it. I know that one personally. That mental shift was harder than I expected. And if you're married, there's another layer. Sometimes one spouse is more ready than the other. Sometimes one retires first. These are real issues. And here's another one. What are your days actually going to look like? What are you retiring to, not just retiring from? What will your routine be? What will your purpose be? That matters more than people think. Most people love being retired, but for the people who struggle, boredom and loss of structure are often a big part of it. A lot of that comes from not doing enough mental prep ahead of time. So do not ignore that side of the transition. It matters. And finally, number 7, build a cash runway. This is a big one for me personally, and it is one of the things that gives me the most peace of mind. Because once you retire, the last thing you want is to be forced to sell stocks during a market downturn just to cover your living expenses. That is where sequence of returns risk can really hurt you, which simply means bad market returns early in retirement can do a lot more damage when you are also taking withdrawals from your portfolio. A cash runway is money set aside in cash or very safe short term holdings so that if the market drops, you are not selling investments at a loss to fund your lifestyle. By having a solid cash runway set up, you give yourself time, you give your portfolio time, and maybe more importantly, you give yourself peace of mind because retirement is not just about the math working on paper, it's also about being able to sleep at night. I feel strongly enough about this that I created a cash runway calculator Excel template, a treasury bill ladder guide, and a CD ladder guide. I'll link those in the description as well. So, if I were to boil this all down into one simple takeaway, it's this. The biggest mistake people make in the years right before retirement is waiting too long to plan the transition itself. They spend years planning how to build the nest egg, but not enough time planning how to live off it. So here's the framework. Know what your retirement is really going to cost, know where your income will come from, know how you plan to withdraw from your accounts, know your health insurance plan before Medicare. Clean up the major financial loose ends. Do not ignore the mental side of the transition and build a cash runway so you're not forced to sell stocks in a downturn and recovery. If you can answer those questions clearly, you are a lot closer to retirement than most people. And if you can't answer them yet, that does not mean retirement is out of reach. It just means that is where your planning needs to start. That to me is what this stage of retirement planning is really about. It's not about complexity, it's about clarity. It's about knowing what you are walking into before you walk away from the paycheck. Thank you so much for listening. This is Mike Upland, early retiree in 2024 at the age of 55. Don't forget, you can also go to mikeupland.com for all of my media in one place. And until next time, take care and make the most of today.